It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
And thank you very much for being here. The phone number remains 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Gary and Eric, they do return on Sunday night, Monday morning. Always looking forward to their return. As a fan of this show, always loving the guys are in studio. By the way, my text line is open, 615-737-9986, 615-737-9986. I host a radio show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. And so I'm on in the morning. So if you want to check that out, you can, 6 to 10 Eastern time. And we are all over the socials. All you got to do is search for us. So there is a lot of people talking about, as you know, RFK Jr. as he was facing this Senate panel talking about vaccinations in America. And I'm going to just play some audio, because I think that there is a lot of reaction to what happened on Capitol Hill today. 3 hours as these senators, including Elizabeth Warren, come in. They are absolutely loaded for bear. And RFK Jr., he was really in the hot seat. And, of course, they're talking about vaccinations. They are accusing RFK Jr. of being an anti-vaxxer. I don't believe that he is an anti-vaxxer. I believe that he is a vaccine skeptic. But really what he's looking for is transparency and honesty. And he wants to know exactly what these vaccines are doing, for example, to our kids. So I'm just going to play some audio. Some of these audio bites I'm going to comment on. Some of them I will very simply let the audio stand for itself. But let's hear a couple of audio bites. The best part, by the way, was him and Elizabeth Warren going back and forth. So that will most certainly be my featured audio bite of the night. But here's a little bit of RFK.
Senator, you've sat in that chair for how long? 20, 25 years, while the chronic disease in our children went up to 76%. And you said nothing. You never asked the question why it's happening. Why is this happening? Today, for the first time in 20 years, we learned that infant mortality has increased in our country. It's not because I came in here. It's because of what happened during the Biden administration that we're going to end.
Yeah, so that is RFK Jr., and he's going after Senator Ron Wyden. He is out of Oregon, and it was really interesting because, and I'm just going to nutshell this. Here's what RFK Jr. is talking about. Now, just so you know where I stand on vaccines, because, I mean, everybody has their own perspective. I think that some vaccines are necessary. I'm all about transparency. I was vaccinated against COVID, and I actually have some issues, I believe, from the vaccine right after I got the vaccine. And I don't want to dwell on this, but right after the vaccine, I developed tinnitus. Now, if you don't know, and just Google it, because there is research out there that will show that some people, you know, more women than men, but whatever, that they got the vaccine and then they developed tinnitus. Now, what is tinnitus? Tinnitus is a consistent ringing in your ears. And I got to tell you, for a guy that listens for a living, for a guy who talks for a living, and I'm wearing headphones, there is always a constant ring in my ear. And I don't know, in both my ears. And it drives me crazy. Some days, some nights, it's worse than others. And ironically, tonight, and I don't know if you've got tinnitus, I don't know if you experience this, but sometimes, and some days and some nights, it's worse than others. Tonight, for example, as I'm sitting here talking about vaccines and, you know, side impacts or side effects of the vaccines, my tinnitus is driving me crazy. And just to let you know, and maybe this is why I'm so passionate about all of this, because we were told that there would be no side effects or side impacts to the vaccines. Now, I didn't believe them, but at the time that I got vaccinated, and I only got the one vaccine, and I didn't get any boosters. But we were told a lot of things that ultimately turned out to be lies. But just to tell you how bad my tinnitus is, I wear headphones when I'm broadcasting. I'm wearing headphones right now. It is so loud in my ear that it's distracting. I wear headphones for a number of different reasons. I do keep them very low because I hate the sound of my voice. But the ringing in my ears, the perpetual, never-ending, infuriating, annoying ringing in my ears, it overpowers the sound of my voice in my headphones. And it's always there. And again, some nights it's not as bad as others, or some mornings it's not as bad as others. I've noticed that when I'm really tired, I get a bad night's sleep, whatever, it's actually worse. And it is a lot worse when I first wake up. Anyway, so that's why you may notice that I'm incredibly passionate about this. But as far as the RFK commentary, as he was speaking to that Senator Wyden, in a nutshell, this. As far as what RFK was talking about, the infant mortality rate has increased after decades-long decline. It went up by 3% from 2001 to 2022. I grokked it. I Googled it. So this is during COVID, of course. So I would say a big part of this, I'd be willing to bet, was because of the lockdowns that impacted in-office visits for pregnant women, among other things. They did have the expansion of telehealth, but I'm not exactly sure how good that was. But they do say, and you heard RFK talking about it, that they are looking into it. Why is the infant mortality rate going up? Inquiring minds do want to know. But I love how RFK, these senators came in and they were really going after him, especially the Democrats, but yes, some Republicans as well. And one of the big things about RFK, and just so you know, I'm not an RFK absolutist or anything like that. I'm really not. You know, on a lot of things, I can look at the positives. I can look at the negatives. I'm an issue-by-issue guy. I can look at Donald Trump. I can look at RFK. I can look at J.D. Vance, anybody. I can look at Marco Rubio. And I can look at the positives and the negatives of each, and that is how I formulate my opinions and my monologues. But one of the things that you have to acknowledge, and the senator out of Oregon should acknowledge, that he has been in his chair. I haven't looked it up, but he's been in the Senate for years. As Americans have gotten unhealthier and unhealthier and unhealthier. And apparently they've done nothing about it. And so I like that RFK came in and he was willing to push back on these senators. Now, this is the much heralded audio. This is the exchange between RFK Jr. and Senator Elizabeth Warren, and it got really heated.
Anybody can get the booster.
I'm sorry?
Anybody can get it, Senator.
Anybody. So you're saying that is now the official rule of HHS. Anybody is eligible to get a booster by just walking into the pharmacy.
It's not recommended for healthy people.
No. If you don't recommend, then the consequence of that in many states is that you can't walk into a pharmacy and get one. It means insurance companies don't have to cover the $200 or so cost. As Senator Dr. Cassidy said, you are effectively denying people vaccines.
We're not going to recommend a product for which there's no clinical data for that indication. Is that what I should be doing?
What you should be doing is honoring your promise that you made when you were looking to get confirmed in this job.
You're going like this.
And that is, you promised that you would not take away vaccines from anyone who wanted them. You just changed the classification of the COVID vaccine.
I'm not taking them away from people, Senator.
It takes it away.
So there's a lot of semantics going on here because RFK Jr. did not take away anyone's vaccines, but part of what he did was he is now, as far as the CDC goes, they're not recommending it for healthy people. I mean, if you've had the vaccine, and again, I've had the COVID vaccine, then I got COVID not once but twice. When Joe Biden told us, oh, yeah, if you get the vaccine, you're not going to get COVID. I got it twice. So that was another lie that Joe Biden told. But anyway, so I never got the booster. But to me, all of this sort of hinges on really what you and your doctor decide. So that being said, because that's where I've always been, and folks that have listened to me in Nashville for a long time, I always said, if you want to get the vaccine, go ahead and get the vaccine. You speak about it with your daughter, with your doctor. I was very much against the vaccine mandates. I think that was an absolute travesty. And that's the big difference, right, between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Donald Trump, Operation Warp Speed, they concocted a couple of different vaccines, and they were there. Joe Biden comes in, and he ultimately ends up, as you know, mandates the vaccines. Good people lost their jobs. And so now there's a lot of disagreement, of course, over whether or not these boosters and the vaccines, the side effects, there's a lot of disagreement amongst not only politicians, but obviously those in the medical community as well. Because if you do some research and you find that there are many studies that will say that boosters did and the vaccines did save lives, other studies that will tell you that they didn't. Other studies will tell you that the boosters and the vaccines, some will say, were unnecessary for healthy adults and actually did indeed, of course, have side effects. We all know about the side effects. My ringing in my ears remind me of that every single minute of every single day that I'm awake. So the studies are contradictory. But part of the issue here, I would believe, is that the Biden administration completely misplayed their hand when it came to COVID. Dr. Fauci as well, clearly. They flip-flopped on masks. They said 15 days to slow the spread. And, of course, that turned into months, and longer in many Democrat-run states, especially when they started talking about the shutdowns of the schools. They shut down the schools for longer than they needed to, in my opinion. People were mandated to get the vaccines if they wanted to continue to work. All of these things. Members of the military were drummed out of the service if they refused. And people who asked questions were deplatformed and accused of wanting to kill people. I mean, I lived through all of this as a conservative talk show host, so believe me when I say this. Scientists who had great reputations saw their careers destroyed if they disagreed with Anthony Fauci. Anthony Fauci destroyed the reputations of good scientists and good doctors. And oftentimes, by the way, these people that Dr. Anthony Fauci, they destroyed their reputations, they turned out to be right. So part of the problem and part of the mistrust here, clearly, is that the federal government, and especially the Biden administration, and people like Elizabeth Warren overplayed their hand.
If you can't get it from your pharmacist,
well, most Americans are going to be able to get it from their pharmacy for free. Most Americans will be able to get it from their pharmacy for free.
The question is, everyone who wants it, that was your promise.
No, I didn't. I never promised that I was going to recommend products with which there is no indication.
When you said...
And I know you've taken $855,000 from pharmaceutical companies, Senator.
Did you hold up a big sign saying that you were lying?
You'll notice, by the way, that RFK throws out the, I know that you took $855,000 from the pharmaceutical industries. Yeah. She has no comment on that, by the way, as you can tell. But I think that that is a valid point that RFK Jr. made, which is you took $855,000 in donations from the pharmaceutical industries. So you are, he is saying, you are bought and paid for by Pfizer or Moderna or whoever, the pharmaceutical industries or big pharma. So there's a credibility issue, I would say, with Elizabeth Warren.
When you said that, because you are the one who said you would not take them away. Now, Senator Kennedy,
I'm not taking them away from anybody.
Secretary,
You want me to indicate a product for which there is no clinical data?
Senator,
is that what you want?
Secretary Kennedy, you said you wouldn't, and now you did.
I'm not.
So, I mean, again, there's a lot of semantics here that deserve more explanation because there's a lot here. I'm not going to bother to go back and fact check what RFK said during the confirmations, but he actually let the truth fly when he said that she took $855,000 from the big pharmaceutical companies. That is the truth. And she didn't deny it. That is a huge amount of money, and it does make it look, fair or not, like these folks are compromised. There's a lot more to this audio. I'm going to get to it coming up next. By the way, the phone lines are open at 866-90-RED-I, 866-907-3339. You can text us. If you don't want to call in, you can chime in via the text line. It's what I use for my local show in Nashville, 615-737-9986. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
Hey there, Hope Savara here with Mother Trucker Yoga, and this is your health tip of the day. Healthy driver, healthy diesel, powered by House. Neck strain can really be a pain, especially after long hours behind the wheel. Did you know neck pain affects nearly 70% of drivers at some point in their career? So let's loosen things up. Sit tall and tip your head to your right shoulder. Now pull your left shoulder down gently and hold for 10 seconds. Switch sides, left ear to left shoulder, right shoulder pulls down and hold for 10. Now roll your shoulders 5 big circles forward and 5 back. Open your mouth wide and stretch your jaw. Hold for 10. Close and repeat that 2 more times. Finally, take a deep breath in through your nose, pause, and exhale through your mouth. There you go. Small, simple changes lead to big results so that you can feel good again. Visit mothertruckeryoga.com and houseproducts.com for more info.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-I on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. Appreciate you listening. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. They return next Sunday night, Monday morning. And the phone number, 866-90-RED-I. Going through some of this audio with HHS Secretary RFK Jr., and he is battling with Elizabeth Warren. I want to get through the rest of the soundbite. They're going over vaccines and boosters and the availability of boosters. Listen.
Secretary Kennedy, you said you wouldn't, and now you did.
I'm not taking them away. Everybody can get access to them.
No, they can't walk into a pharmacy the way they could last month and get access.
It depends on the states.
A year ago,
but they can still get it. Everybody can get it. Everybody can get it, Senator.
So look, let's move on. You clearly are taking away vaccines. You are putting America's babies' health at risk, America's seniors' health at risk, all Americans' health at risk, and you should resign.
So there you go. That's Elizabeth Warren. Always rational, Elizabeth Warren. Can I ask a question? Is everybody clamoring for boosters? Like, I'm just curious because I don't know a lot of folks who are clamoring for the boosters. But, you know, the bottom line is I do believe that both of these folks, and it pains me to say, but I think they're both right in this case. Kennedy has not taken away the boosters. There are various state guidelines and options, but I'd be willing to bet that if you call your local pharmacy, as I have, the boosters are available. They just are. So what Elizabeth Warren is trying to do is horribilize to make Senator Kennedy look bad. I should not say Senator Kennedy. RFK Jr. trying to make him look bad, going after the Trump administration as well. And I've got a little bit more on this, too, coming up next.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. My text line is open at 615-737-9986. And going over the just some of the more relevant audio, Elizabeth Warren and RFK Jr., and they're going back and forth about the availability of booster shots. And Elizabeth Warren is accusing RFK Jr. of changing his mind, lying, whatever you want to say. She says that, and they're arguing semantics. I'm going to replay a little bit of that conversation, but they're arguing semantics because RFK Jr., when he was going through his confirmation hearings, he said, I'm not going to take away anybody's vaccine, which I don't believe that he has. Elizabeth Warren is saying that because the CDC is now not recommending the booster shots, she is accusing him of taking it away. He is saying, I'm not taking away anybody's vaccine or booster shots. If people want to get a booster, well, they can go to their local pharmacy and they can get a booster. And by the way, in a lot of states, there's guidelines that the states follow and so forth. So it just kind of depends on where you are. But in a lot of states, people have called up their pharmacy and they are able to get the booster if they so choose. And oftentimes it is free. It depends on what's going on in your particular state. But this is the last part of this conversation. Then what I'm going to play is part of RFK Jr.'s opening statement because it was incredible. Listen to this.
I'm not taking them away. Everybody can get access to them.
No, they can't walk into a pharmacy the way they could last month and get access.
It depends on the states.
A year ago,
but they can still get it. Everybody can get it. Everybody can get it, Senator.
So look, let's move on. You clearly are taking away vaccines. You are putting America's babies' health at risk, America's seniors' health at risk, all Americans' health at risk, and you should resign.
So again, that is Elizabeth Warren and her closing statement. There's a lot of politics involved here, friends. I'm just telling you, there's a lot of politics here. And Elizabeth Warren, as I mentioned in the previous segment, she received $800, and I think you said $55,000 from Big Pharma over the years. So there is a bit of a credibility issue, in my opinion, with Elizabeth Warren. But, putting all of that aside, as I said, I don't know if people are clamoring for COVID booster shots, but RFK Jr., as HHS secretary, he has not taken them away. There are various state guidelines and options. The free vaccine program for uninsured people in August of 2024, that ended in August of 2024. So there is that. The funds were gone for it. Kennedy did take away the CDC recommendation for boosters back in May for healthy individuals. But for people ages 65 and older, and for those 6 months and older with underlying health conditions, they are still recommended to get the booster shots. So what Elizabeth Warren is doing is she is throwing these blanket statements out there that, honestly, she's not being truthful about what Kennedy did. And he is trying to explain to her, listen, we recommend it for people with underlying conditions and older people. And that's the bottom line. And by the way, to me, that makes sense. That if you are a healthy individual, and listen, I'm no doctor. But if you're a healthy individual, then I don't believe that you need a booster. But whatever. I mean, here's my thing. I've always said this. You consult your doctor. You bring the doctors back into this conversation and you work it out with your physician. And by the way, he also took away that recommendation for pregnant women. But the bottom line is across the United States, if you want a booster, you can get it. Certainly with a doctor's note. Boosters remain free under private insurance if you are in a high-risk group. Medicare and Medicaid also offering it for free. So for me, there's a lot of nuance to this conversation. But I think part of this is people like Elizabeth Warren, people like Bernie Sanders, a lot of these Democrats, and yes, some Republicans as well, they take issue with RFK Jr. Now, you've got to ask the question, how much of these people, how much are they getting from the pharmaceutical industry? Because there's a credibility issue there, in my opinion. However, and I'm going to expand upon this in a moment, but when you say, okay, so Elizabeth Warren, you got, I think you said $855,000 from Big Pharma, right? So therefore, she is bought and paid for by Big Pharma. Now, if you are a conservative, I just want to point this out because if you're a conservative and you're hearing this, you may get hit with this. If Elizabeth Warren is bought and paid for by Big Pharma and your favorite Republican, senator or congressman or House of Representatives is getting a bunch of money from the NRA, then are you being a hypocrite? Because that means that your favorite representative or senator is bought and paid for by the NRA, right? What about AIPAC? If your favorite representative or your favorite senator is receiving donations from Israel and they do support pro-Israel legislation, then is it because they are being, bought and paid for by AIPAC? So I'm just telling you that there is an opportunity here to be called a hypocrite if you don't, if you're not pointing out the hypocrisy, which is what I am doing. I am suspicious of Elizabeth Warren and all of those big pharma donations. But it does open you up for criticism. But here's the thing. She can be pro-vaccine, and you've got all the big pharmaceutical companies who obviously are pro-vaccine. So they both have the same mindset. And so she is pro-vaccine, not because she is getting the money, but because she just happens to be pro-vaccine. So I'm just telling you that there's different ways to look at that. Now, I also thought that RFK's opening statement was really impactful. And I'm just telling you, I like RFK. I think that he is doing a lot of good. I think that there are some things that, maybe he gets criticized on fairly. But by and large, I like what he's doing. What he's doing is, and just going to sort of, nutshell this, is we in our country, what we tend to do is we respond to illness. It is sick care, as he says. It is sick care. It is not health care. What he wants to try to do is make America healthy again by being proactive in how America eats. The chemicals we are putting into our body, the chemicals that we are exposed to on a daily basis, like, for example, pesticides. He wants to take a closer look at all of those factors because right now in America, what we do is we respond to sickness. What about a society and what about a government that looks at the factors that make us unhealthy, and we try to adjust those factors so that we're actually healthy for longer portions of our lives? I mean, to me, that makes all the sense in the world. I mean, how many, I should look this up, I'll Google it, but, by and large right now, majority of our kids are unhealthy. A lot of our kids, they're overweight. There's not a lot of activity in our kids these days for a number of different reasons. So you have that, you have the ultra processed foods, you have all of the drinks that these kids are guzzling, the power drinks that these kids are guzzling, this big sugar sodas that these kids are guzzling, and the Monster drinks and so forth. So there's a lot of, and by the way, I do understand there's parenting issues involved here as well. I would never let my kids gulp a Red Bull or, some of these Monster drinks. Never in a million years would I let my kids drink what some of these parents are allowing their kids to drink. So there are parental issues as well. But this is RFK Jr., his opening statement this morning as he was facing the Senate. Listen.
Will continue to be in our thoughts. Let me start with the big picture. Under President Trump's leadership, we at HHS are enacting a once-in-a-generation shift from a sick care system to a true healthcare system that tackles the root causes of chronic disease. Chronic diseases reach crisis proportions in our country. And finally, we have an administration that is taking action. The MAHA report assessment, which the White House released in May, was the first government analysis of the key drivers of childhood chronic disease: ultra-processed foods, chemical exposures, physical inactivity, and over-medicalization.
So over-medicalization, and you just heard him mention a lot of things. That MAHA report that he's talking about did focus on the poor diet of kids with high consumption of sugar and artificial additives. It also discussed pesticides and other chemicals that contribute to issues like asthma, neurodevelopmental disorders, and so forth. Because there are issues that are out there. There are pesticides that are out there that can cause some of these issues. This MAHA report also called for more research into what they call precision toxicology to address how chemical exposures affect and impact kids, especially in utero. I know people whose kids have been diagnosed with cancer, and they don't necessarily know how that kid developed cancer, but there's a lot of discussion about how there were pesticides that were used in the house when the mother was pregnant. And so I'm just saying, I like the fact that RFK Jr., he is asking for more research. Why is that an issue? But it is an issue for a lot of these companies and a lot of these senators and so forth. By the way, that MAHA report also addressed limited physical activity in kids. That is a huge issue, in my opinion. You look at kids today, they're doing, and again, parental issues, but they're doing nothing but spending hours and hours and hours, and they're gaming. They're not out on the baseball field. They're not out on the football field. They're not out riding their bikes. They're not out at the park. They're stuck in their gaming chairs, and they are there for hours. And so that MAHA report criticized a number of different things, including, by the way, the overprescription of medications and the vaccines. And his big thing has always been what is called corporate capture. Now, what is corporate capture? Corporate capture is where the pharmaceutical industries, they're the ones that are actually paying for the research and the studies that influence policies. So if the people making the stuff are the ones funding the studies to gauge health impact of this stuff, then that is not a legit study, right? Here's more from RFK Jr.
This month, we will follow with the MAHA report strategy, the Trump administration's solution for addressing each cause. At HHS, we haven't just been writing reports. We have been the busiest, most proactive administration in HHS history. In just half a year, we've taken on food dyes, baby formula contamination, the grass loophole, fluoride in our drinking water, gas station heroin, electronic cigarettes, drug prices, prior authorization, information blocking.
So this lady starts yelling at RFK Jr. She's in a wheelchair, by the way.
The committee will come to order.
Yeah, and they wheel her out. And by the way, the funny thing is RFK Jr., he starts laughing. I've got a little bit more audio on this. There's a lot to talk about. There are other topics that I do want to get to tonight. The phone number, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. You can always text in 615-737-9986. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. I got a bunch of people texting in here on the text line at 615-737-9986. Few people said, it's interesting how Elizabeth Warren and these Democrats are all screaming, what about the children? What about the children as it relates to vaccines? When, of course, we know that Democrats are all about abortion. So the hypocrisy is absolutely real. By the way, this is interesting. You know that Donald Trump apparently, and I don't know if this is true or not, I'm going to tell you the story. Supposedly, Trump wants to ban transgender people from buying guns. Going to talk about that straight ahead on Red Eye Radio.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
And thanks for tuning in. The phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Got my text line here for one more night on Red Eye, 615-737-9986. You don't want to call in, you can chime in by texting that phone number. I am fielding text messages from all across the country, and I love that. All right, now coming up in this hour, we've got a lot to get to because there is a story out that is kind of breaking the internet where supposedly Donald Trump and the DOJ, they're looking to try to ban transgender people from buying guns. So we are going to get into that. I want to play one more. In the last hour, I played a whole bunch of RFK audio regarding his testimony on Capitol Hill today regarding vaccines. And I want to play one more soundbite from his opening statement. Then I'm going to read you a tweet from J.D. Vance that absolutely nails it. But first, you had Senator John Cornyn, a Republican out of Texas, and he was engaged in a conversation with RFK Jr. And RFK Jr., one of the things that he did is he launched on the lies that we were told during COVID, and this is just part of what he had to say.
Do you believe COVID-19 was politicized?
Yeah, the whole process was politicized. Senator, we were lied to about everything. We were lied to about natural immunity. We were lied to about, we were told again and again the vaccines would prevent transmission, they prevent infection. It wasn't true. They knew it from the start it wasn't true because that's what the animal studies and the clinical trials showed. We were told that there was science behind cloth masks. The CDC allowed the teachers union to write the order closing our schools, which hurt working people all over the country, and then pretend it was science-based. All of these issues, and then I can show you, like, for example, Chairman Wyden was talking about me politicizing ACIP. During COVID, probably the most famous scientist on ACIP was Martin Kulldorff from Harvard, the great, world-renowned epidemiologist and vaccinologist. And he criticized the COVID booster mandates. They ejected him from COVID because he wasn't in the orthodoxy. The two biggest health officials at FDA during COVID, Dr. Gruber and Dr. Krause, criticized the Biden mandates, vaccine mandates. President Biden said in August, I would never take that vaccine, the Trump vaccine. And he came in, he mandated it, and then he fired the two top health officials at FDA who said, hey, this thing has not been properly tested. So the whole process was politicized, and even today.
So let me, I'm 15.
And listen, he hit it out of the park, RFK. By the way, what is ACIP? ACIP is the Advisory Committee on immunization practices. And the bottom line with that whole thing was clearly that, I mean, this all goes back to the deplatforming of a lot of people on the socials. You also had a lot of world-renowned scientists. And, you know, RFK Jr., he's talking about it. How we had world-renowned scientists whose reputations were destroyed if they disagreed with Dr. Anthony Fauci. There was, you know, and people in Nashville have heard me talk about this ad nauseum, but there was the Great Barrington Declaration where they came out and they had very dire warnings and predictions about what the lockdowns would do to the kids. And again, and I've said it 1,000 times, a lot of the stuff that they predicted did come true. But Dr. Anthony Fauci destroyed their careers. You remember back during the days of COVID when if you, as just a regular person, if you put stuff up on, Facebook or Twitter or whatever that was anti-Fauci, they would throttle you. They would deplatform you. And so, yeah, this whole thing was politicized. I mean, it was politicized, and they took away your right to work if you didn't get the vaccine. I mean, we all went through it, so I don't want to relitigate too much of it. I do want to say hello to James, who has been patiently holding on, and he is the first caller tonight. James, thanks for calling Red Eye Radio. Go ahead.
Hi, well, thanks for letting me put in my 2 cents. Just wondered why you thought that China's never been held liable, I mean, for all the monetary damage they've done. I know WHO is probably never going to do anything, but, I mean, why don't we at least get a little something back from them for their
transgression?
Some kind of deterrence. So, yeah. Well, I mean, some kind of deterrence so that maybe they take a look at their standards and practices, I don't know. But
well, no, listen, James, I wholeheartedly agree with you. And so there's a number of things there. We could talk about China and how they refused to cooperate with investigations. They refused to even acknowledge the people that said, wait a minute, this clearly did not come from a wet market. This clearly was something that escaped one way or another from the lab, from the COVID lab in Wuhan. I mean, it was clear that they were taking this virus and they were supercharging the virus. And of course, I don't want to relitigate the whole thing, but I think China should somehow be penalized. The problem is that China has so much invested, and countries all across the world have a lot invested in China. So the problem is, how do you punish China? Like, what do you do? China has never admitted, by the way, any wrongdoing in all of this. It's almost like the gaslighting that we all have to deal with when it comes to China. Because my opinion, everybody knows that China, they were doing this gain of function research. It escaped one way or another. I don't know if it was, a lot of people will say that what China was doing, this is just so you know, people will say that China legit allowed COVID to escape. They released it. That's what some people will say. Now, I don't think I go down that path, but I know the path that people are on, where they will say that China's economy was suffering, and so they wanted to help destroy the economies of other nations so that they wouldn't be that far behind. Now, I don't go down that road, but that's what some people will say. And I'm sure that there's other opinions or theories. But for me, I think that one way or another, it did escape. And China has never admitted to wrongdoing. China won't admit to, all the gain of function research and all of those other things. They won't cooperate in any way, shape, or form. And so I don't know what you would do. The WHO, they're not going to do anything because China essentially owns the World Health Organization, even though America gives a lot more money to the WHO. But China, They have a lot of power. There is a lot of power. And so I would love to see China one way or another, whether it's sanctions or what. But I think right now, I think we're just all worried about what is going to happen the next time. Because I do believe that there will be a next time. I think there is no doubt that there will be a next time. I think every couple of months, we hear about another COVID variant. Every couple of months, the headlines are out there and the headlines will scream. The headlines will scream that there is another variant that is out there, and then it eventually fades away. But I think that this kind of research, the gain of function research, is still going on. And if you don't know, I sort of assume that everybody knows what we're talking about. But gain of function research, just give me 20 seconds. Gain of function research is where they will take these viruses in these labs and they will supercharge these viruses. They'll make them worse. And then they do that so that they can figure out how to come up with either a vaccine or a medicine or something to take care of those viruses. So they're creating them so that they know how to heal them, if you know what I mean. Now, it's very controversial. As a matter of fact, when Obama was president, when all of this was going on, when the research was going on, it was actually illegal to fund this kind of research. And Dr. Anthony Fauci, they say, did fund this research by sending grant money to, I think it was the University of North Carolina. The University of North Carolina then sends it to the Wuhan lab in China. And they will swear up and down, they didn't know that they were doing a gain of function research, but clearly they were. As far as RFK goes, so J.D. Vance sent out this tweet or, post on X. This is what he said. When I see all of these senators trying to lecture and gotcha Bobby Kennedy today, all I can think is you all supported off-label, untested, and irreversible hormonal therapies for children, mutilating our kids and enriching Big Pharma. You are full of crap, and everyone knows it. By the way, he used the SH word, but I can't say that on the radio. I mean, J.D. Vance is right. J.D. Vance is absolutely right. And by the way, I actually don't mind J.D. Vance or really anyone dropping the occasional bomb, vulgarity, the occasional bomb to make a point. And J.D. Vance made some really, really good points there. Now, coming up, I'm going to take a quick break, but coming up, we are going to talk about the Trump administration supposedly trying to ban transgender people from trying to buy guns. We're going to talk about that straight ahead. Phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. You can always send in a text at 615-737-9986. We'll return next.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Smart owner-operators make every single week as profitable as possible. One trip is not enough time to be considered profitable or unprofitable, and an entire month may be too much time to manage. 1 week is the right amount of time to deal with efficiently. To do so, look at the advantages and disadvantages of every day of the week. Match trip length to the optimum day of the week. Plan to deliver on the day you have the best opportunity of getting a load. Your personal weekly plan will vary depending on the weekly delivery flow cycle of your region, typical length of haul, personal requirements, and other factors. What's important is to have a specific weekly plan that helps you be successful. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE. So this is the headline from the Daily Mail. Trump ignites culture war with extraordinary plan to ban transgender Americans from owning guns. This is so predictable. So now the left, who have been screaming that there's too many guns in America, are complaining because transgender people might not be able to buy guns. I mean, did Donald Trump do this on purpose? Now, here's the deal. We don't even know if this is true. You know, in politics, in all things, there's certain there's things that you can do to kind of send out they call it a test balloon. This might be a test balloon to see how people would react to this story. But this is actually really interesting. And you know what? It's not as simple as just, hey, you put on a dress and you're a dude. You can't buy a gun. It's all about mental illness. And is someone who is transgender actually mentally ill? That's what this whole thing focuses on. So this is part of the story from the Daily Mail. President Donald Trump's Justice Department could take a huge step to address gun violence, they say, as Attorney General Pam Bondi is considering banning transgender people from purchasing firearms, according to the Daily Wire. So how do you do that? How do you take away the constitutional protection of the Second Amendment from those people who identify as trans? By calling gender dysphoria a mental illness. That's how they get away with it. Now, it's really interesting because just so you know, I don't want people who are mentally ill to be able to get guns. I mean, I just don't. But the question is this constitutional? The question is not necessarily if you put on a dress and you claim that you're transgender, does that make you officially mentally ill according to the American Psychiatric Association? Because that's what this whole thing is about. They say that individuals within the DOJ are reviewing ways to ensure that mentally ill individuals suffering from gender dysphoria are unable to obtain firearms while they are unstable and unwell, a DOJ source claimed. So this goes through a number of different things, including, of course, again, the American Psychiatric Association. This goes through the Second Amendment. This goes through mental health. This goes through activism. So this is a multi-layered study. So now what you have to do is you have to go through the different classifications of what it means to be trans and have gender dysphoria. Because right now, gender dysphoria is classified because of, how they classify it. It is classified as a mental illness. And mentally ill individuals are prohibited from buying guns. There is, of course, justification for that. Gender dysphoria is classified, though, as a mental health condition. It used to be classified, I believe, as a mental illness. Now it is classified as a mental health condition by the American Psychiatric Association. Now, that describes distress or discomfort as a mismatch between one's gender identity and their assigned sex at birth. However, inclusion as a mental health condition is controversial. But that's where all of this comes in, is how do you classify it? Because if you classify it as a mental illness or a mental disorder, then you can stop them, transgender people, from buying guns. But if it is not a disorder or a mental illness and it is only a condition, then they can buy guns. So you see where this is going, right? It all comes down to how you classify gender dysphoria. And you do have studies, by the way, that have shown that up to 80% of people with gender dysphoria, they also experience co-occurring anxiety or depression. So that's a big part of this conversation. Because if there is co-occurring anxiety or depression, is it to the point where they could be classified as, mentally ill or whatever. So there's a lot of nuance to this. It's not just the headline of should transgender people be banned from buying guns. It goes into all of these other categories of discussion. Now, the internet, as you can imagine, the socials are going absolutely bat crap crazy on this story because they're screaming about the hypocrisy of the Trump administration, the hypocrisy of MAGA, and all kinds of related discussions. So we're going to continue to talk about this. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, and the conversation is this story that came out. This was I guess, in the afternoon. Should transgender people be banned from buying guns? This story came out from the Daily Mail. It is all over the place, though. And the headline is Trump ignites culture war by extraordinary plan to ban transgender Americans from owning guns. And I was explaining before the break that this is all. Now, I don't know if this is true. I got to put this out there right now. I don't know if it's true. Have not seen any comment from the Trump administration. Have not seen any comment from the DOJ, Pam Bondi. Have no idea. But I was saying, and people commented on the text line at 615-737-9986, that Donald Trump does nothing by accident. Everything is on purpose. Because I was saying, it's ironic, this story, you have all these people that are screaming that we have too many guns out on the street. So then Donald Trump says, I'm going to ban transgender people from buying guns. And now everybody on the left is upset that there's not going to be the ability for transgender people to buy guns. But I do want to be clear, Trump has not said that. We have not heard anything. But it's just a story that's out there, and the Daily Wire is reporting it as well. And again, it's all over the place. But how do they do it? How do you, because of the Second Amendment, which I am a huge supporter of, how do you take away the gun rights of someone who is transgender? Well, you try to classify it as a mental illness. And that's, if this story is true, that's where they're going to go. So we have to go look at how gender dysphoria is classified, because if they do classify it as a mental illness, and mentally ill individuals are prohibited from buying guns, there's the justification. That's, as we say, the hook. And I really don't want to go deep into this, but I feel like it is necessary to talk about this. Gender dysphoria is classified as a mental health condition by the American Psychiatric Association. Now that, again, it describes distress or discomfort from a mismatch between one's gender identity and their assigned sex at birth. However, its inclusion as a mental health condition is controversial. You do have studies that have shown that up to 80% of the people with gender dysphoria experience co-occurring anxiety or depression, but they do say there is now evidence linking gender dysphoria itself to increased violence or firearm misuse. Some say there is, some people say there isn't. Just depends on who you listen to. But one thing that's been going on is the activists have now been working really hard, and this has been a long-term thing that they've been doing. The activists have been working hard behind the scenes to get the American Psychiatric Association to reclassify gender dysphoria, because it did used to be classified as a mental disorder, but it was, I guess you would say, downgraded to be classified as a mental health condition. There's a big difference between a mental disorder and a condition. And by the way, it also used to be called gender identity disorder. It was classified as a mental disorder. Then they changed it to gender dysphoria and was no longer a mental disorder, but instead classified as a mental condition. Did you get all that? What they're trying to do, what the activists are trying to do is destigmatize the trans movement. That's what they're trying to do. And so the more you downgrade this gender dysphoria, the more you normalize it. The more you get it away from being a mental disorder, the more that it will be normalized. So just playing along with the story, if the Trump administration can somehow get the American Psychiatry Association to classify gender dysphoria as a mental disorder or what have you, then they can make the adjustment and the DOJ can say, well, since it is a mental disorder, then they don't get to buy guns. That, again, is the hook. So the reaction has been fierce on this, as you can imagine. I pulled some audio from the socials, and I'm going to comment on this as we go along. But, again, you have a lot of people with a lot of opinions on this, and here's one guy who is clearly somebody who is an activist, and this is what he had to say.
Breaking news, Donald Trump wants to ban transgender people from owning guns because he says they're mentally ill. I wish I were making this up. CNN just broke the news. Trump's Justice Department is looking into doing this following a recent mass shooting where the shooter, for the first time in history, was transgender. As you know, we've never had a transgender shooter before, but because one shooter was transgender, now they want to ban all trans people from having guns.
Well, this guy's way off. I don't know where he's getting his information. He says there's only been one case of trans shooters. Memo to random dude on the internet. There have been actually several. You, of course, had Minnesota that we had last week. We had one in Nashville, of course, where I'm from. The Colorado Springs nightclub massacre back in 2022, which left 5 dead and dozens wounded at the LGBTQ plus bar club Q. That was carried out by a suspect who later told lawyers he identified as non-binary and used they-them pronouns. That is straight from the Daily Mail. There have also been other cases, of course, involving transgender shooters, a 2019 attack at a Denver area high school, and a 2018 rampage at a Rite Aid warehouse in Aberdeen, Maryland, both of which were linked to suspects who identified as trans. So there have actually been a number of mass shootings with trans people, but, whatever. That is important. But I'm just pointing out that this guy is wrong on that part of the story. He said a lot more. Here's more of what he had to say.
Now, here's the thing. I'm a little divided on this because we have too many guns in America. So if the Republicans want to start playing this game that we start banning people, okay, great. Do we ban Southern Baptists from having guns next? Do we ban MAGA people? Do we ban people who watch Fox News? I mean, if they want to play this game, okay.
See, that's just dumb. That is as shallow of a conversation as you can get. Southern Baptists, are Southern Baptists anywhere near the classification of mentally ill or having a mental health condition? No. People that watch Fox News? Obviously not. I would say to this particular person that more than likely 2A supporters and Fox News watchers, they are the people that are more than likely to stop a mentally ill person from killing a bunch of people because they are responsible gun owners who tend to carry. Same with Donald Trump supporters. So this kind of really shallow lack of nuance or perspective from people like this, and frankly, it's a dishonest conversation at that. So whatever to this guy, but none of the people that he mentioned are considered or have ever been considered mentally ill. they're not even considered as having a mental health condition. So if you want to play the game, you would lose. Nimrod. So let's try to be rational.
This has such echoes of 1930s, it's not even funny. They're now taking discrete groups of people in America and slowly taking their rights away. This is exactly what happened in Germany in the 1930s. It's exactly the way you do it. It's exactly what a lot of us were predicting they were going to do. This is incredibly un-American. It is sickening that they have targeted transgender people. Whatever you think of various transgender rights or whatever, they're human beings, people. What is wrong with you?
Okay, so much for having rational conversations. So nobody is talking about putting trans people in camps or any of that nonsense. But it's crazy because the folks on the left, they've been trying to restrict gun rights for years. And now Trump supposedly is moving in that direction, and these folks are now upset. It's kind of laughable. Here's another one. You want to hear another one? This is a guy named David Riley. He is on X.
The Trump DOJ has decided that they're going to attempt to ban transgender individuals from owning firearms. This, it would seem, would put MAGA in an awkward position because I don't know how many times I've spoken to MAGA supporters who claim to be Second Amendment absolutists, meaning shall not be infringed is the only part of the Second Amendment that they are actually capable or willing of reading. Now, they're wrong about this, but if they're consistent about it for years and years and they decide that people who are, convicted violent felons, people who beat the shit out of their wives or girlfriends and commit domestic violence and all this other stuff still get to keep their guns, it's kind of a hard and big time heavy lift to be able to suggest that trans people shouldn't be able to have guns because they have an attitude or what they would call a mental illness that these people don't like.
So, again, he's casting a wide net on Donald Trump supporters, but beyond all that, he really doesn't know where Donald Trump supporters are going to land on this issue. They don't. But again, this is the nuance that, in my opinion, is required on this issue and on this conversation that we don't even know if the Trump administration is going to do this. So my problem with this guy is that, and this is part of the problem that we have as a society, I think, is that there are people that have such a low opinion of Donald Trump supporters that I feel like their opinion is almost irrelevant to me because he doesn't know Trump supporters like I do. I am a Trump supporter. I don't agree with everything that he does. A lot of things I do, some things that I don't. But he does continue on. Here's more of what he had to say. This is the last cut on this, but he's just, again, he is so hating of Donald Trump supporters that you can't really have, in my opinion, a rational conversation with a guy like this.
Regular mental illness is just fine, but gender dysphoria, that should disqualify you from having a gun. Shall not be infringed doesn't apply to them. Well, I can tell you without any hesitation that all of MAGA is going to cave and change their mind about being Second Amendment absolutists and just say, yep, in this case, they should all be banned. And the way
this guy is so full of crap. And this is what I mean when I say that, on the internet, of course, in the world of the wild, wild west of the internet, you can say pretty much anything you want. But this guy doesn't know Trump supporters. Because I have seen and interacted with more Trump supporters on the radio and on the socials and everything else than this guy ever has. And I know that there's a lot of Donald Trump supporters who don't like some of the things that he has done, and they let him know. So I don't know where the, I'm going to air quote this, the Second Amendment absolutists are going to fall on this. But here's more of what he had to say.
Should all be banned. And the way I know this is that every time I go to a Trump event, whether it was the inauguration, any Trump rally I've ever been to, dozens of these things, one of the only issues these people want to talk about is trans this and trans that and men and women's sports. They're obsessed with it.
You see, again, he's full of crap because while it is an important issue, and we do believe it is an important issue, there's lots of important issues. And I would ask this guy, okay, so if you've got a daughter, are you cool with a dude in a dress walking into her bathroom? I do believe, and I've got a daughter, I do believe that that is worthy of some obsession.
Obsessed with it. The idea that they're not going to go along with this is absolutely insane. They're going to.
So we'll have to, I'll play a little bit more of this coming back, but, you know, I think you know where I'm going with this. If you want to chime in, you can at 866-90-RED-EYE. 615-737-9986 is the text line. We'll return next.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Eight 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. A lot of people chiming in on the text line that I'm using this week, 615-737-9986, about this story that alleges that Donald Trump is going to try to ban the sale of firearms to people that are transgender. I've gone through a lot of the different aspects of this, including a lot of folks on the left who bizarrely are up in arms over this, and also some people on the left that are dying to know how the two-way absolutists that are Donald Trump supporters will react to this. I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. I've got a lot more on this and a lot of other topics straight ahead. Find me on the socials at Dan Manda Show. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
And good morning to you. The text line that I use when I'm filling in for the guys is very active this morning. Thank you. 615-737-9986. The phone number, 866-90-RED-EYE is the number, 866-90-RED-EYE. And I don't know about you, but I know that I'm excited for Gary and Eric to return on Sunday night, Monday morning. And there is a lot that they're going to have to talk about coming up. You know, in the previous hour, we were talking about this story, and I don't even know if it's real. I don't even know if this is something that Donald Trump is going to do. But the headline was, should transgender people be banned from buying guns? Now, I'm not going to redo the whole entire segment because a lot of y'all have just heard it. But I'll probably come back to it later on in the radio broadcast. But the people that are checking in on that text line are saying, you know, they're giving their opinion on the topic, which is great, and I appreciate that. But everybody is sort of laughing because they know that this is going to make liberal heads explode. And I don't think that they really understand that this is part of Donald Trump's MO, you know, the mode of operation. Because what's going to happen, and people have been saying this also on the socials, is that here you have the left, as I said in the last hour, here you have the left, and they've been, you know, screaming about too many guns, too many guns, too many guns. And then Donald Trump says, oh, yeah, well, I'm not going to allow guns to be sold to transgender people. And then they're screaming, well, you know, you can't do that to transgender people. We should have more guns as long as they're sold to transgender people. See, the left, they won't know what to do. And this is a pattern with Donald Trump. And I love this pattern because what he does is he wraps the left in knots. And so when you've got, say, for example, Chicago, I'm not going to do a lot on Chicago tonight. Should President Trump sending the National Guard to Chicago. We've been talking about that all week. I don't know if there's actually been an update on that story. I think that we're all just waiting for the next shoe to drop. With whether or not the president will be sending National Guard troops into Chicago. There's a lot of legal stuff that, is involved in this. We've been talking about it all week, talk about the 10th Amendment and all of that. But it's interesting that this is actually, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, and I do a morning show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. You can find the links to listen everywhere. But here's what's interesting. Our governor, Bill Lee, is someone who just last week, said that he was not interested in, as the governor for the state of Tennessee, of utilizing the National Guard for our hellscape of a city in Tennessee, which is Memphis. He just reversed course. Our governor is now saying, you know what? Everything is on the table regarding the crime in Memphis. And so it was interesting because with this story that has come up with whether or not the National Guard should be used in Chicago, clearly we have seen a lower rates of crime with the National Guard. Everybody wants to know, though, and it is a legitimate question. It's one that I have asked, which is, okay, so we all will acknowledge, because we have to acknowledge that the National Guard has been able to curtail crime in Washington, D.C., but everybody wants to know what happens when they leave. Will the worst of us retake the streets? Or because there has been a rush of all of these police officers or law enforcement officers in Washington, D.C., and everybody's just been chill. Everybody's just been cool. All right, you know what? There's a lot of cops around. We're not going to go out and do the things that we usually do. What happens when they leave? You had a surge of police officers, or I should say a surge of law enforcement. And by the way, is there a city in America that does not have a lack of law enforcement officers? I know that every city in the state of Tennessee has a shortage of police officers. And honestly, I mean, the question is, and I mean this with all due respect to you cops, man, because I have the utmost faith in you and I have the utmost respect for you. But why would anybody want to be a police officer these days? I mean, I get you have this sense of responsibility and community and all that, and I love that. I mean, you are putting your lives on the line. This is my point. Law enforcement officers are putting their lives on the line. Every night and every day that y'all put on the uniform, every day and night that they put on the uniform, they are putting their lives on the line. I have mad love and mad respect for the police officers, even the ones that, pull me over for a ticket. I still have a lot of respect for them and an appreciation. But there's so many in our society that don't have an appreciation for them, and knowing that there's also a target on their back, yet every single day they come into work. But I understand that there's a lot of people, every time I go down this road, I do hear from people who will say that, yeah, I thought about being a police officer, but when I looked at where society is today and where the culture is, it's too high risk, not enough reward, and there's a lot of hate. And the hate is real. And the love and the respect that you get from most Americans doesn't necessarily balance out the hate that is out there. And why do we have hate? Why does some portion of America call for defunding of the police, call for fewer officers and more social workers as crime continues to unfold? Well, it's because of the Democrats. It's because of their taking advantage of the death of George Floyd. It is their demonization of law enforcement officers. That's why we have such a shortage of police officers around the country. And so when we see crime going up, and then you see Chris Christie and Let's Go Brandon Johnson out there in Illinois, and the mayor of Chicago, and they're screaming about how they don't want the National Guard in. Well, it's their kind of attitude as to why, and I should Google it. I'll Google it, but I'm assuming that Chicago has an officer shortage as well. Well, the Democrats are to blame for the law enforcement officer shortage. The Democrats are to blame because they are the ones that fan the flames of anti-police sentiment here in America. They are the ones that were screaming defund the police. They are the ones that were screaming about how we need more social workers and fewer police officers. And those Democrats, they have blood on their hands. They absolutely do. Because you see these communities, and you can say, well, yeah, you know, the defund the police movement, that you know, it is still active, but a lot of these communities have realized that, no, we need the cops. But the damage is done. Because it was that defund the police movement and that disrespect and demonization of police officers that led to the shortage. And if there was a shortage before the whole George Floyd thing, well, then it was exacerbated by the Democrats and their demonization of cops. So, yeah, I'm looking at you, Democrats. You got blood on your hands, Democrats. And so you are the ones that are perpetually screaming, oh, we need to figure out the problems in the inner city. It's not safe. It's not safe because of you and your policies and your rhetoric. This is what they do. They're always trying to divide. And that's why the American people are so sick and tired of the Democrats. And every single day I wake up and I look on the internet and there's another story of how the American people are sick and tired of the division that the Democrats cause. And let's all be honest, they do cause a lot of division. And the more that we look at what the Democrats do and the things that they say and the things that they try to legislate, the more they anger and frustrate the American people, including people in their own party. Listen to this. Headline from the Washington Free Beacon: Democratic voters blasted fractured party in Washington Post interviews. And they say that right now there is no leader within the Democrat Party. Democratic voters in Pennsylvania slamming their party's national leadership as fractured, telling the Washington Post that the party lacks a definitive message and a figure to rally behind months into President Donald Trump's second term. I mean, think about this, friends. Who are conservatives rallying around? Well, we got Donald Trump, we got J.D. Vance, we got Marco Rubio, we got Ron DeSantis. There's four. And as the Washington Post, I love this, as the Washington Post is running around asking the Democrats who it is that they're looking to rally around, Gavin Newsom is out there being a jackass, pretending to be Donald Trump, mocking and mimicking Donald Trump. You know, one of the things that you could say about Gavin Newsom and these hijinks and shenanigans of pretending to be Donald Trump and mocking Donald Trump on the socials is that a lot more people are following Donald Trump than are following you. Donald Trump has scoreboard, Gavin Newsom. You have completely train-wrecked California, Gavin Newsom. People are leaving your state in huge numbers, Gavin Newsom. And the only reason Why you can say that California is regaining population is because they're illegals. Your own, I say this to Gavin Newsom, your own party is out there saying that there's no one to lead the party. You have been trying to be the leader of the Democrat Party, and guess what? You have failed. I just named 4. I named 4 right off the top of my head of leaders in the Republican Party that any 4 would make a really good president. You know, Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, he's really good. I mean, he's well-spoken. He's a smart guy. I mean, I disagree with his politics, but as a politician, I see that there would be value and appeal to the Democrats. Oh, except that he's Jewish. Yeah, we can't... boy, that's tough. We can't have Josh Shapiro, the very well-respected governor of Pennsylvania. We can't have him as the vice presidential candidate. Oh, no, we can't do that because he's Jewish. We can't do it. That's not going to satisfy the anti-Israel part of the Democrat Party. So they went with Tim Walz. And Tim Walz was a bumbling idiot and a buffoon. And he continues to become more of a bumbling idiot, and he continues to exhibit his buffoonery every chance he gets. They say that, yeah, right now there is no leader, said one of the more than 20 Democratic voters whom the Washington Post interviewed in Doylestown and Philadelphia. They say there's no strong voice for the people as a whole. We're fractured. We don't have a definitive message, a second voter told the Washington Post, while another said that Democratic leaders need to be really, genuinely more engaged with their constituents and with the party. And they don't get it. And do you know what I wonder? I wonder if Democrats are beginning to see that Republicans and Donald Trump supporters, they're not the ones that are divisive. We're willing to have a conversation. We're willing to welcome anyone into our tent. And it's the left that is the cancel culture party. It is the left that simply cannot have a conversation. It is the left that the only thing that they agree on is Orange Man bad. And when the only thing that you can agree upon is Orange Man bad, well, that's not much of a platform. So I love that the Washington Post, who, by the way, obviously, as you folks know, Washington Post is very left-leaning. And they're reporting on this. This is a message. This article is a message to the Democrats from the Washington Post. Get your crap together. Now, I hope that they don't because of my own selfish political reasons, because I want what's best for America, and what is best for America is conservative principles. 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. That is where we find Frank in, is that Palos Hills, California, Frank?
Palos Hills, yes.
Palos Hills. All right, go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Frank. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've been listening. I'm a new listener. I've listened to a couple of days, but there's a lot of points that you're saying. I'll be honest with you. Like, everybody's celebrating on the right, but from what I see from a personal standpoint here, the economy is not doing well. For example, it's a lot of lies. We're not in the golden age. I saw $291 billion deficit for July. I see the most people on unemployment since 2017. I see the dollar biggest plunge since 1973. All these are showing a trend that our economy is failing ridiculously, to be honest. A lot of this stuff is happening. Our economy was trending up back in 2024. Biden didn't do a great job, but he inherited a horrible economy, a tanking economy. So whatever he did, at the end of the day, when he walked in, it was a horrible economy. When he walked out, it was a lot better than it was.
Hey, Frank, hold on. So, a couple things.
Am I wrong?
Yeah, you are wrong on a couple of things. First of all, what I would say is when Joe Biden came into office, there was a plan in place that Donald Trump had that if Biden had just followed the plan, I think the economy would have been a lot better. Joe Biden came in and he had a couple of massive spending bills that sent the economy into a free fall. And but no, not because of COVID, because the plan that No, Frank. When Biden came into office, Donald Trump had a plan in place for the economy. And Biden came in, he spent a ton of money, including a lot of giveaways and a lot of spending on Green New Deal type stuff. That is why the economy ended up at over 9.6 or 7% inflation rate. But thanks for the call.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan in for Gary and Erica. Somebody tweeted at me. You can find me on the socials at Dan Manda Show. Somebody said, can you slow down on the text line? It's really early. 615-737-9986. Now, a couple of things. Because Frank called up, and he was clearly bloated for bear, or bloated for Dan, whatever. And he was trying to go down the road of the Biden economy. So there's a lot of different metrics to gauge the economy. And so I'm of the opinion now, right now, that, and I think Gary and Eric may disagree with me on this. This is fine. I think that the tariffs right now, it's too early to tell. And my audience in Nashville knows that this is where I'm at on the tariffs. I know where Trump is going. I agree with him regarding the level playing field. I don't believe that we'll know about how the tariffs are impacting our economy for a while. But I like the fact that we are getting a ton of revenue from the tariffs. But again, it's too early to tell as far as inflation goes, and I haven't looked to see what inflation is now. But I see where Donald Trump is trying to take the economy. I'm seeing it, and I totally understand it, and I get it. And I agree with the president that there's a lot of potential with the tariffs. But I also understand that there is the possibility that prices could go up. But when you couple that with all of the tax breaks and all of the things that Donald Trump has done regarding, the extension of the Trump tax cuts, you could also talk about no tax on tips and a lot of the other things that was in the, the big, beautiful bill, then it all hopefully will even out. And again, we don't know until all of this is baked in. But you know what is baked in? Biden's economy. So Frank called and he started trying to shine up what happened during Biden's economy. So let's just real quickly reminisce together, shall we, as far as Joe Biden's economy. And I'm gonna go a little deep, but not really deep. When Biden came into office, as I explained to Frank, when Biden came into office, there was a plan that Donald Trump had for post-COVID regarding the economy. Now, everybody knew, honestly, I mean, I sure did, that Biden was going to come in and Biden was going to do his own thing. And do his own thing he did. Because when Biden came in, even though jobs were coming back, even though the economy was slowly but surely starting to recover, and we were, the vaccines were out and people were going back to work and so forth, Biden comes in with the American Rescue Plan. The American Rescue Plan was basically a bunch of goodies. Remember this? A bunch of free stuff, injecting money into the economy artificially. $1,400 stimulus checks for all Americans or most Americans. Enhanced unemployment was there as well. I think the apartment managers, they couldn't kick anybody out for not paying rent. You couldn't evict somebody for not paying rent. There's a lot of things in the American Rescue Plan that gave people a lot more money. There are so many economists that will tell you that the American Rescue Plan is what brought us inflation rates over 9%. And so then he comes up with the Inflation Reduction Act. Do you know what the Inflation Reduction Act did? Well, it did not lower inflation. Joe Biden and the Democrats even came out and said, well, maybe we shouldn't have called it the Inflation Reduction Act because that's not what it was designed to do. In other words, they lied in the title of the bill. What the bill actually did was there was a whole bunch of Green New Deal kind of stuff and a lot of crazed spending by the Democrats. So that, of course, adds to the debt and the deficit and everything else. So Joe Biden was an economic train wreck. And we are still dealing. Oh, and by the way, let's also not forget, since we're talking about Joe Biden's economy, let's also talk about the fact that Joe Biden told many Americans, well, he told all Americans, but many Americans lost their jobs because they weren't vaccinated. How did that economy work out for you? Where Joe Biden tells you that you are not allowed to support your family. You are not allowed to serve in the military unless you get a vaccine. Then we can talk about all of the illegal immigration. We can go down this road. You want to do this? With the illegal immigration. You get all of these people coming in here illegally, and they are driving down. And some people are going to disagree with me on this, and that's fine. But illegal aliens come into this country, and if they do work, like let's say in the construction industry, I have heard from so many construction workers who will tell me that the illegal aliens come in, and what they do is they drive down wages because they're willing to work part-time or under the table or whatever it is. They just want the cash. And so if you're a carpenter, and forgive me if you're a carpenter, I have no idea what you folks make. But let's say you're a carpenter and you make $40 an hour. A bunch of illegal aliens come in and they're willing to work under the table for $25 an hour. And so now, as a carpenter, you have no choice but to, lower the rate that you make if you want to work. So they depress wages as well. So there's a lot of different ways that you can, gauge the economy. So by some metrics, yeah, the economy may look challenged, but by other metrics, the economy looks fine. Stock market's doing great. I didn't see what it's doing today, but the stock market is doing really good. Unemployment numbers, they do go up and down. I do understand there are concerns about unemployment. I also understand that we'll have to ultimately see where all this goes. I'm not one of those people that makes snap decisions or snap judgments or, decisions on where I think the economy is going because of, 1 month's inflation figure or 1 month's unemployment figures. I don't. I mean, here's a good example of why I don't. The unemployment numbers came out, I think, right, yesterday? And so the joke that I made during my morning show in Nashville was don't even bother to report them because they'll be most certainly adjusted, because that is also part of what we have seen. So right now there's positive and negative things about the economy. There are concerns. But there's always concerns about the economy. Ultimately, we'll have to see where this whole thing plays out. But when you talk about the tariffs and all the money that is coming in, and will the American people ultimately end up paying more money for that? Will that impact the jobs market? I mean, I understand that. But for me, it's just too early to tell. But I trust Scott Bessent. I trust Donald Trump. And I trust J.D. Vance. But in my discussion with Frank, the thing that I would tell Frank is, I think it's really silly to come on here and criticize Trump, which is fine. I mean, I'm all for conversations. But you come on and you criticize Donald Trump, which is, again, fine. But then you try to shine the piece of crap that Joe Biden's economy was. And I'm sorry, but that's not going to fly. Because we are, 8 months now? 8 months past Joe Biden's presidency? We can look back. There are some people that I know that are still suffering the consequences of Joe Biden's economy. You know why? Because they had to put a whole bunch of stuff on their credit cards because inflation was so high. So when you come on here and you try to say, Joe Biden's economy was great, dude, you got to find another talking point. I'm all for honest conversations, and I'm all for admitting that, I'm a Trump supporter. Are there things that I'm watching and I'm concerned about, and I'm watching the graphs and I'm watching the charts and I'm reading all the experts? Yeah, I am. But I'm also able to put the whole thing in perspective. Because once a lot of these tax breaks go into play, and I don't have the whole list in front of me of Trump's, big, beautiful bill. But once a lot of these tax breaks come in, then that is going to be more money in your pocket. You know what the other thing that I would say? Can we take a look at what Joe Biden paid for? Or what your money was used for during the Biden administration? You want to talk about all of those illegal aliens that came into our country? And while you were dealing with, paying things off with a, 9.1, 9.2, 9.3% inflation rate, while we were all paying that, all these illegal aliens are coming in and they're getting free food, they're getting cash cards, and they're getting a free place to stay. All on your dime. So, Frank, I'm not gonna play the game of, Joe Biden's economy was really great. There's a lot of ways to look at Biden's economy, and all of them suck. Now, in 4 years, in 5 years, in 3 years, maybe in a year, I'll look back and I'll say, yeah, Trump did some things wrong. But you know the other thing that I would say about Donald Trump? Even if he turns out to be wrong, and I don't know if he is going to be wrong, I have hope. I do have a lot of hope. Even if he ultimately made some wrong moves on the economy, at least I know that his heart is in the right place, and I know where he's going. Joe Biden, the only reason why he came up with that American Rescue Plan with all of the stimulus checks and the enhanced unemployment. You can't evict somebody even if they're behind on the rent. All of these things was to buy votes. And so that he could put his own stamp on, oh, look what I've done for you. So Trump may not do everything right, and I totally get that. But Joe Biden did everything wrong. And he lied to us about illegal immigration. He lied to us about the vaccines. The media and the Democrats, they all lied about Joe Biden's ability to run the damn country because his brain, frankly, was dissolving and he was losing his mental acuity. They lied about that. That made our country and our world weaker. Because now, actually, you want to continue to talk about the economy and things that the American people had to pay for while we were struggling with inflation rates over 9%? You want to talk about, and by the way, haven't even gone down the road of gasoline prices under the Biden presidency. What about all that crap that was paid for by USAID during the Biden administration? We could go down that road. So it's not only how we had to pay more for groceries, but it's also where our taxpayer dollars went and what that paid for. So I don't know how anybody can try to shine the piece of crap that is the Biden economy. Frank tried, but I'm not going to let him get away with it. Anyway, Dan here, Red Eye Radio. We'll be right back.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, the phone number, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Really interesting story coming up. And I've got it coming up in the next hour. And it's actually my favorite story of the day. And there is a congressperson out of Arizona. And she wants taxpayers to pay for an illegal alien's cancer treatment. That's right. It's a big debate. It is coming up on Red Eye Radio. By the way, the text line, 615-737-9986. You can find out more about me on the socials at Dan Mandis Show. I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is on 6 to 10 Eastern, and you can find us on YouTube and Facebook, all the streaming apps as well. We will return next. This is Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. They return Sunday night, Monday morning. Myself, as a fan of those guys, really looking forward to having them back. The text line that I use for my local show in Nashville is being used for the national show this morning, 615-737-9986. If you want to chime in, but you don't want to call, you can text in, 615-737-9986. Now, this is interesting. The headline is, Arizona Democrat wants taxpayers to pay for illegal aliens' cancer treatments. That's right. So I'm going to play you some audio. And there is a lot of debate going on about this particular story because she does have a very, what's the right word, sympathetic story. So let's go through it. because I will tell you that in the end, I'm going to be asking you folks, am I the a-hole? An Arizona Democrat is embroiled in a controversy over describing illegal aliens as her constituents. The controversy began when she visited an ICE detention center where she promptly described what was going on inside. So this is where she said, and her name is Yasmin Ansari, and this is where she described her constituents, including illegal aliens, as the people she represents. Listen.
Hi, everyone. This is Congresswoman Yasmin Ansari. I just came out of the Eloy Detention Center. It's August 30th. This was my second official visit to Eloy. I was last here on May 29th and received a full tour of the detention center and spoke with many women here. The reason I came back today was because I have many constituents who are trapped inside Eloy, who we have been communicating with and have been hearing about the devastating conditions inside.
All right, so she described the people that are in this ICE detention facility as her constituents. Well, her constituents are illegal aliens, and so a lot of people started asking the question, okay, well, wait a minute. You have people that voted for you, but if these folks are illegal aliens, then theoretically anyway, they're not allowed to vote. So how are they your constituents? Now, I'm going to get through all the context, okay? Because I know that some of you are yelling at the radio right now. I get it, but let me just finish. So that started all of this controversy, because people definitely picked up on her describing illegal aliens, again, as her constituents.
So I didn't realize this was such a controversy until the right-wing media started attacking me for using the word. So I Googled the word constituent.
Mm-hmm.
The definition of constituent is somebody who is part of a community. Doesn't matter what their legal status is. If somebody is an asylum seeker, if somebody has a green card, if somebody is a U.S. citizen, if somebody lives in the community, I represent them. Constituent does not mean voter. I don't care if none of these individuals can vote for me. I don't give a
Nice.
I care about making sure that the United States government, with our taxpayer dollars, is treating human beings with dignity and respect. So yes.
All right, so she doesn't give a beep. Yasmin Ansari. Now, she's a Democrat out of Arizona, and she has someone who lives in her district who is in ICE custody and has cancer. And she's been fighting for, this congresswoman has been fighting for this illegal alien to get the cancer care that this congresswoman says she deserves. So I'm going to play you the audio, and she is describing the cancer battle of this woman that lives in her district, who she refers to as one of her constituents. I want you to listen close.
Yari was diagnosed with cancer over 10 years ago and has not been able to see a specialist since she was detained in February. She is coughing up blood, too weak to stand, experiencing numbing, and has lost 55 pounds. She spoke to us in tears, begging to see an oncologist and telling us that the detention center will merely give her Tylenol and stomach ulcer medication for cancer. Today, I am using my voice to demand immediate medical attention, and I'm talking about specialized medical attention from an oncologist for Yari. She cannot wait one more day to receive the fair and humane treatment that she deserves. And I'm doing everything I can to help secure that, including writing directly to ICE and sharing the literal medical records that Yari's loved ones have shared with us, to show them just how sick she truly is. Today, I am so glad that others have joined voices with mine to speak on the conditions that they too have seen, and to call on ICE, on DHS, and on this corrupt Trump administration to stop turning away from people like Yari who are suffering and dying in U.S. government custody.
All right, so that is the story of Yari. That is Congresswoman Yasmin Ansari. And so all of this is highly controversial for a number of different reasons. I mean, listen, it is a sad story that Yari has cancer, but there's a lot of Americans who also don't have health care. Does Congresswoman Enzari fight for them just as hard? Or does she save all that passion for an illegal alien? And again, I'm just warning you, friends. I'm going to sound like an a-hole. And I'm just telling you. I don't want to sound like an a-hole, but sometimes when you are telling the truth, sometimes the truth hurts. So Republican North Carolina Representative Pat Harrigan responded to all of this with his own remarks yesterday afternoon on X. A member of Congress who brags that she had to Google the word constituent has no business writing laws, Harrigan wrote, referring to the Arizona Democrat, admitting that she had to Google the word constituents, going on to say constituents are hardworking American citizens, the people who elect you, not illegal aliens, not asylum shoppers. Harrington goes on to say, when you say, I don't care if they can't vote for me, you admit it. You don't represent Americans. You represent everyone but them, the Republican lawmaker added. So, of course, she responded to the congressman. Here's what she said on X as they were going back and forth. Pat, your selective hearing is showing, and sadly, you are missing the point, she says. Many people are in ICE detention because Stephen Miller wants to look tough and juice up deportation numbers. The woman I met have committed no crimes. Seeking asylum is not a crime, she says. This press conference was about a woman named Yari, who was a green card holder from my district. So she's been all about defending, just so you know the history of her, she's been all about defending Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the wife of, the wife-beating human trafficking gang member that the Democrats like to call Maryland Man. And Zari also traveled with other Democrats to visit him in El Salvador back in April. So she's one of those. She thinks that illegal aliens apparently are heroes and so on and so forth. So you know the type. But it seems to me this is all about trying to protect, for her, the illegal aliens and not the people that actually voted for her. Now, I do understand when you are a politician, you are supposed to represent all the people in your district. Yes, even the ones who did not vote for you. But again, remember, illegals cannot vote. So this woman in the ICE detention center, she's not a voter. But the Supreme Court does mandate that illegal aliens be treated, by and large, they have certain rights in many facets. They get their free education. Their kids get free education. Depending on the state they live in, they can also get health care coverage. They can get in-state tuition in some states. They can get cash assistance and financial aid in some instances. And some may get access to affordable housing. So a lot of this costs hundreds or billions of dollars in taxpayer dollars. So you've got all of this money that is already going to illegal aliens. So the question is, should the taxpayers foot the bill for an illegal alien that has cancer? You got to take the heartstrings out of it. You got to just look at it as that question. If the question is, should the taxpayers foot the bill for an illegal alien's cancer treatments? Now, to me, the answer is no. And she had a very compelling story about this woman in ICE custody who, she says, has cancer, and all she's getting, I guess, is Tylenol. So what I would say is that if she does have cancer, and it sounds like she does, then what she does need to see is she does need immediate medical attention. Then they need to send her back home where she can get the treatment she needs. or get herself in a situation where she can get treatment. Because if you are an American citizen and you don't have health insurance and you get cancer, you're screwed. I got a friend of mine who doesn't have medical insurance. He's got to replace all of his teeth. He was born here, and he doesn't have a congressperson standing up in front of microphones demanding that he get his teeth and his dentures for free, getting the teeth pulled and the dentures for free. No, this is going to cost tens of thousands of dollars. Now, again, you have to take the emotion out of it. I know that I sound like the a-hole, but sometimes you have to look at things without the emotion. I don't want Yari, the girl, I don't want her to die. Certainly not. But the problem that we have in this country is we have American citizens who are taxed to the hilt. And I often say, not only does it anger me that I have to pay taxes, but it also angers me what my taxes are used for. There was a time when I didn't have medical insurance, and I had to have some stuff done. I didn't have any Congress people or senators standing up and demanding that the taxpayers pay for my medical treatments. No. I had to go in debt. I had to pay it off slowly but surely, and it was a lot of money. So we can play this, am I the a-hole game, because I'm not necessarily moved by this woman's story that she has cancer. I mean, again, it's a sad thing. But take the performative aspects of this congresswoman out of it and take the emotion out of it, and you strip it all down to that one simple question. Should the taxpayers of America pay for the medical needs of illegal aliens? I mean, to me, that answer is no. And again, they already get a lot of stuff. I mean, again, it depends on the state. But, illegal aliens, they come. Kids get free education. Sometimes they get a lot of clothes. They get some health care coverage, in-state tuition, cash assistance, and financial aid. Some may get access to affordable housing. It just, oftentimes it depends on the state. Free cell phones. Remember the Obama phones? I mean, we could go on and on. So that's part of what's going on with this story. If they want to prioritize this woman and get her to a place where she can get some, cancer treatments, then okay. And I know that I sound like the a-hole. And if you don't know, I keep saying that because there's this I think it's a web show or a cable show or something where it's called Am I the A-hole? Where you are, taking sort of an opinion on it, on a topic or whatever it is, or there's a situation that you're involved in and you want to know if, you are the jerk in this situation. Because sometimes you're the jerk and you don't even know it. And in this case, it'd be a lot easier to just say, oh, yeah, we should pay for Yari's cancer treatments. Again, strip out the performance of the congressperson, strip out the emotion, and you look at the question, and you look at the question clinically. Should the American people pay for the cancer treatments of illegal aliens? And to me, the answer to that question is no. Now, I don't know all of the nuances of this case. Like, she was here, I guess, on a green card. Was she here? Did she overextend, whatever visas she had? I don't know any of that. But I just know that for me, there's a lot of us. There's a lot of Americans. There's a lot of people here in America who have lived here for their entire lives. I know a dude, another one, who is, I think he's about 60. And he's been paying taxes since he started working at the age of 14 or 15 years old. He's been paying taxes all the way to 60. Then he loses his job. And then he loses his health benefits. And then something goes wrong. And he does not have a congressman standing up demanding the taxpayers pay for his medical treatments. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. We'll return next.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at JJ Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. Drivers must always be prepared for a roadside inspection. This means drivers should always have their personal, vehicle, and company credentials organized and ready, and having any shipment paperwork such as bills of lading or hazardous materials shipment emergency response information organized and ready for the inspection official. Just an FYI, the top 2 violations written against drivers every year, as well as during Operation Road Check, are log general form and manner and log not current. Both are completely avoidable if the driver keeps the log accurate, compliant, and current at all times. Having the vehicle ready for inspection involves the driver conducting daily inspections and making sure any problems that are discovered are immediately corrected. Vehicle readiness also requires the company to make sure that the vehicle is current on all scheduled maintenance and that the maintenance schedule is adequate. This will make sure the driver is being given a sound vehicle to start with. This tip was brought to you by JJ Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90 Red Eye. Got a lot of text messages on that last segment. Holy mackerel. 4702 says, when my wife died of cancer, we had over $2 million of doctor bills, and we had insurance. He says, I lost everything and had to move into a motel with 3 young kids. He says, 15 years later, we are just now getting out of it. And he says, no one stood up to help us. See, that's the point. The point of that entire monologue, well, there's a lot of points that I made in the monologue, but, one of the things is that you have these Congress people that really seem to be passionate about protecting the illegal aliens. But what about the people that actually vote and pay taxes? And I'm not saying that illegal aliens don't pay taxes. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that it does seem like there is a protective cocoon for these illegal aliens in the Democrat Party, and it's not fair.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
Appreciate you being here. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, having this conversation about whether or not taxpayers should have to pay for the cancer treatments of this illegal alien in Arizona. And it's my contention that no, Americans take their performance out of it, that this congresswoman who is demanding that we pay for the cancer treatments of this illegal alien, a lot of performative tactics going on here. That's number one. And number two, when was the last time, if you're an American citizen, when was the last time that anyone stood up for you in Congress and got the taxpayers to pay for your medical bills? 8126 says this: I'm an American citizen who needs a biopsy in order to determine if I have prostate cancer. The cost? $2,000. He says, I'm saving for it as the government is not going to pay for it. And I'm getting all of these texts from people that have been in this situation where medical debt And medical debt, by the way, if you know anything about medical debt, when you talk about people who have had big financial problems, a lot of times it's medical debt. And so there's a lot of aspects to this story, and I opened up with, am I the a-hole? Because the Congresswoman, she has this big, long story about how this woman is suffering. She's in the ICE facility in Arizona, and she is demanding that the American people pay for her cancer treatments. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, and Michelle is calling in from Florida on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Michelle, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, Dan. How are you?
I'm okay. Go ahead.
So I'm a retired registered nurse. I live in Florida now. I retired here, but lived and worked in Arizona for, 45 years. And I did work for their Medicaid program, which that's where the funds for care for the illegals come from, is from the state's Medicaid program, which is in Arizona, it's called ACCESS, and that stands for Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System. So we, and I'll say we, meaning Arizona, do not pay for anything for an illegal other than emergency care. Now, we do pay for oxygen for them and for their dialysis treatment, because if we didn't, those would become immediate, emergency cases. And it's cheaper to actually do that. But that is it. And so there's no way this congressperson is just talking out of, her, what.
Right.
She doesn't know what she's talking about. She didn't even know what a constituent was, which this is the, caliber of people we're getting these days. But it can happen. Cancer, I'm sorry, she has cancer. No, you're not the a-hole. We don't have unlimited funds. We don't have Medicare for all at this point, which is what Bernie wants. But so it would be against the law for this to even happen. So it's not going to happen. It won't happen. She's going to have to go back to where she lives, or her church, or all these other agencies.
You're right, and Michelle, one of the things that they say is that she has been in this detention center for many months, and so if that's the case, then my advice to the Trump administration would be put her to the front of the line, figure out what needs to be done, and get her to where she needs to go. Don't hold her prisoner in this detention center while she's dying of cancer. You need to get her to someplace where she can get the treatment that she needs. And so I think that is reasonable.
Yeah, she can self-deport, today. She can always self-deport. But, I'm sorry, but, and this happens with the illegals all the time in Arizona. They get, say, in a serious car accident, and then they need rehab. We won't even pay for the wheelchairs or the rehab or anything. But people have to go home. Go home and get your care where you belong. So, no, we can't do it. And it won't happen. It's against the law for them to try and do that.
And Michelle, I appreciate the call. And that is where the performative aspects of this story comes from, because when I played the audio in the previous segment, where you have the congressperson, and she is trying to pull on heartstrings. And listen, I get it. It's sad. It is really sad. But at the same time, and my text line is still going crazy of people that are telling me about all of the medical calamities that have hit them, and they did not have a congressperson standing up and asking for the taxpayers to pay for their medical bills. Bob is in Baltimore, Maryland on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Bob, how are you?
Yeah, good evening, or good morning, I should say, Dan, to you and all those listening. And my thought on this congresswoman, in hearing her, she sounds very compelling. And being so, I have a suggestion that I think would help in this woman's case, and even a longer range approach, Dan, and that is that for the congresswoman and others, instead of supporting these people or treating them in such an extreme case, and I think the woman is very desperate, who has this cancer, to instead of tapping the taxpayer, to appeal to George Soros and these other billionaires. I think one of them is Tom Steyer, And Dan, instead of those billionaires putting money into elections as they've done to elect these district attorneys and state's attorneys who are pro-criminal and causing our once great and beautiful cities to become crime-ridden, uninhabitable, lawless slums, that George Soros and Tom Steyer and these others, support these people in need while they're in this country and put their money into something good rather than spend massive amounts of money destroying our nation.
Yeah, boy, you're right on that, Bob. Let me ask you, because you're talking about, hellhole, hellhole cities and so forth. How bad is Baltimore?
Well, let me say this. I live in Baltimore, and I can tell you when I was a boy growing up in the 1950s and into the early 60s, Baltimore, Dan, was the sixth largest city in the nation. It had a population of nearly 1 million people. It was a great and proud city where good and ordinary everyday people lived in these, I would say, stately, well-built brick row homes. And the city was just full of energy and commerce, industry, small businesses, and there wasn't a thought of crime. You could go anywhere and feel perfectly safe. I remember my dad, who was an attorney and knew his way around the city, when I was with him riding as a boy, he said, as we were going through these row home neighborhoods, he said that home ownership is what gives the city so much of a strength. And now the city, Dan, is down to something like 560,000. I think there are just numerous carjackings. Yep. They have gotten the murder rate down. They've destroyed the black family at the national level in the 60s. That's extremely detrimental. That has to be reversed. Yep. There are some people now, it's so bad that there are good people who will not come into Baltimore City. So that's what's happened to it. It was just a wonderful city. And I think that there
So Bob, I got to ask you, hey Bob, real quick. So I got to ask you then, why do they keep voting in Democrats in Baltimore?
I just think it's a situation where there's not enough political fresh air, Dan. That's the best I can say. The things may be changing. There are good people. I think the Republican Party in Maryland needs to be stronger and get a message out. And I think nationally, I think the Republican Party, Dan, needs to be something that goes beyond the party. I think that what we should be doing as Americans and Republicans is looking to our American way of life and saying we want our Republican Party not just to be a party for the party's sake, but to reflect our American ideals of human freedom. And I think along with that, what is so important, and I think you've alluded to it, what is human creativity. We need to do that, and I think that will transcend all of us and give us a great outlook. And it's something that the Democrats could never hope to achieve with what we, through our initiative, our Judeo-Christian values, our care and service for one another, have done to produce such a great nation. And the nation, let me say this, getting back a little bit to touch on the subject, give just off the top of your head without my asking, the amount that we give as a nation nationally in charity, both domestically and internationally. It comes from a very good group. It's $556 billion a year. That comes from Charity USA. They've been around since the 1930s, yes. So we're not the flawed, ill-founded, racist, unjust nation that we're accused of. We're a very good and giving people. And I think if we can get away from this class envy and class warfare that the left and Democrats are trying to drag us into, that we can do so much even better.
Yeah. Bob, what a great call, and I appreciate you chiming in. And I got to tell you, your experiences in Baltimore are very much like my experiences growing up in Los Angeles. Now, that's where I grew up, and folks in Nashville that listen to me, they know that I come from California. That's where I grew up in Southern California, Glendora, to be very specific, and then I ended up moving to the San Fernando Valley when I was adult, so on and so forth. But over the years, the California that I grew up in the 1970s and the 1980s, it disintegrated. literally disintegrated into a hellhole of illegal immigration, gangs. When my mom passed away was the last time that I was there, and the homeless people are everywhere. And I got to tell you that it was just, when I went out there last year, it was for my mom just taking care of business after my mom passed away. And I remember saying to my wife on the plane ride back, I am never going back. Because exactly what Bob's talking about is exactly what I experienced in Los Angeles. And a lot of you folks that grew up in some of these, bigger cities, you've had the same experience of watching the towns that you grew up and watching the cities and the states that you grew up in. And, Los Angeles is such a perfect example where it was, the Golden State and, pretty palm trees and fantastic beaches and, all of those things. And now there's just homeless people everywhere. And there's gangs and you've got all of the illegal aliens and the state is going bankrupt, and you've got in California, of course, who your governor is, Gavin Newsom, and yet the state has all of these problems. Yet here you are with the fine people of California who continuously vote for Democrats. And it doesn't make any sense. I actually posted this on my X feed. Find me at Dan Mandis Show. I don't know the veracity of this particular tweet, but it makes sense. Go see it on my Twitter feed at Dan Mandis Show. And it's a meme, and it says, Hiroshima, 1945, and it's got the smoldering ruins of the bomb. Later, in 2016, Hiroshima is a thriving community. It is a huge city in Japan. It looks really good, and clearly, they have recovered from what happened back in 1945. On the bottom part of the meme is the city of Detroit. In 1945, it is thriving. They're building cars, the whole thing. Great American city. In 2016, Detroit is a hellhole with broken down buildings and the whole thing. Y'all know about Detroit. The moral of this story is it is easier to recover from a nuclear bomb than it is to recover from 5 decades of Democrat socialist policies. I don't disagree. You can find that meme if you follow me on X at Dan Mandis Show. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Everybody's asking me on that text line, 615-737-9986. Where can they find that meme? I told you. On my X feed, at Dan Mandis Show. And I think it was a couple of days ago, so you've got to kind of scroll down a little bit, folks, but it is there because I thought that it was so incredibly good, because I've always been fascinated. That's why I spent so much time talking to Bob out of Baltimore. Is because we do watch as these cities just turn into, there's no other way to say it. They turn into hellholes. And yet the people in those cities, they keep voting for the same party over and over and over again, over generations, as the cities continue to deteriorate. It makes no sense.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.